go into healthcare because we need more healthcare providers. We don't need more healthcare developers. Obviously, you're not going to walk in and do a surgery as a layman, myself included,
Right.
day one. But I do think people can be taught. You have to always remember that, we are people at the end of the day, and like people want to be treated, hopefully, like with some level of dignity and respect. And it's basically treat others as you would like to be treated. And then everything up and down and in between, where you give them options to purchase it later, or you can find a capital partner, which would be a group like us.
This is Maestro Minute, the show that discusses all things real estate, sharing interviews with the most successful people in the industry. Hear from their perspective and what they are doing to achieve success. Get exclusive tips on how you can also succeed in real estate. Maestro Minute is brought to you by Maestro Development. Here's your host, Nareg-Mouradian.
So some of the viewers that are watching, they want to get into healthcare development. What do you recommend that they do? They don't have any experience in that world. How do they jump in and get some experience?
First, they don't, because I'm not trying to introduce too many other competitors.
You just don't do it?
Yeah, I want to leave it for us. And then the second thing is go into healthcare because we need more healthcare providers. We don't need more healthcare developers. Understanding the real estate is important, but there's a lot of different ways to get into development, and there's a lot of different roles in development as well. What you do in construction management and delivery is a critical component of the development cycle. And that's one of the more important pieces that, as you think about a successful developer, that differentiates the good from the mediocre, is that they're able to deliver projects, on time, on budget, and that the client ultimately wanted. And some of those skills don't necessarily need you to go to a quote developer school to get to. You can learn how to deliver for clients in any industry, and you take that skill set with you to something like this. I'm a believer that people are inherently capable of doing pretty much anything. Obviously, you're not going to walk in and do a surgery as a layman, myself included,
Right.
day one. But I do think people can be taught. I think what matters is you look at what a developer does, and they are essentially providing a service to a client. And that service can be chopped up and kind of compartmentalized now to where you can do what's called like a fee development, where you just build something for a client that's ultimately going to own it, like a healthcare system.
Wow.
Or you could do something where you build it for them and then you own it. And that's kind of the more traditional model. And then everything up and down and in between, where you give them options to purchase it later, or you can find a capital partner, which would be a group like us, where we can come in either, look, if it's a pre-lease development, we could come in before you start building to determine, where that sale price is going to be, which allows the developer to figure out where the rent needs to be on the price of the project. And that's, an oversimplification, but that's kind of how I would say the development game works, but also like how you could get into development is just seeing how and where you can play within that. I don't know if I'm
that totally makes sense.
Directly answering the question.
I think you are. You said don't get into it.
I did. I was trying to be as nebulous as possible so that I can confuse people away from the sector.
Would you say there's one development that you've worked on in your career that you think about often that excites you, or maybe went the wrong way? I don't know. What lessons learned do you have? What exciting things do you have in the last 20 plus years?
It's funny. It's one of the first lessons I learned. There was a doctor in Florida. I'll withhold his name because no one wants to be associated with being a delinquent tenant. But I was like just starting out as a property manager, and I, noticed he was late paying his rent, and I tried to get a hold of him a few times through his office staff and never got him. And then at some point, I just started writing rent demand letters. And I think what was lost in that is, you open up the procedure manual and that's just what you do. You have to always remember that, we are people at the end of the day, and like people want to be treated hopefully like with some level of dignity and respect. And, it's basically treat others as you would like to be treated. And I lost sight of that pretty early. And so I had to be reminded of that. And I think since then that message stuck with me. It was probably first couple years of my career. And ever since then, I am probably overly so sensitive to my messaging and how I come across, especially to prospective clients and investors. I always will read and reread things before they go out to a client, just because I want to make sure that I'm saying it exactly the way I want it to come across.
Yeah, and I think this is super important, having FaceTime, having
Yeah.
conversations, emails, texts, phone calls are great, but when there's an issue or you want to have like kind of a conversation about something, it's always goes more smoothly in person. And I think during the pandemic that was kind of lost, especially now with virtual meetings and all that. But I think getting together, breaking bread, meeting together is great. I mean, we've been working together for a while. I haven't seen you for a while, so this is great.
I
to
missed
have
you too.
here. Yeah, I missed you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Maestro Minute podcast. Make sure to rate this podcast if you found it helpful, share it with a friend that could use it, and follow us on all major podcast platforms. The Maestro Minute, powered by Maestro Development.